Park Board. Leslie, would you call roll?
I will. Christie.
Here.
Hanley.
Here.
Lerman.
Here.
Schultz.
Here.
Samersky.
Here.
And Chair Ingraham.
Here. Okay, next on the agenda is the approval of the agenda. Are there any comments, or do we have a motion?
I move to approve the agenda.
I'll second.
Christie.
Yes.
Hanley.
Yes.
Lerman.
Yes.
Schultz.
Yes.
Samersky.
Yes.
And Chair Ingraham.
Yes. We have 3 sets of minutes from our 2 meetings, well, a special meeting we had with the attorney and Mike Funk about the roles of the board, and then our last meeting in August, as well as the September joint meeting. And I'd like, if any questions or comments, otherwise we need 3 motions, 1 for each set of minutes. So if there are any questions, a motion for August 6th special meeting?
I move to approve the minutes from the August 6th special meeting.
A second.
Christie.
Yes.
Hanley.
Yes.
Lerman.
Yes.
Schultz.
Yes.
Samersky.
Yes.
And Ingraham.
Yes. Same thing for the August 6th actual full Park Board meeting? Any comments or questions, or otherwise a motion to approve?
I move to approve the August 6th regular meeting minutes.
A second.
Christie.
Yes.
Hanley.
Yes.
Lerman.
Yes.
Schultz.
Yes.
Samersky.
Yes.
And Chair Ingraham.
Yes. And finally, any comments or corrections to the September 3rd joint meeting? Otherwise, I'll entertain a motion for approval of this.
I move that we approve the September 3rd joint City Council and Park Board study session minutes.
I second.
All right, Christie.
Yes.
Hanley.
Yes.
Lerman.
Yes.
Schultz.
Yes.
Samersky.
Yes.
And Chair Ingraham.
Yes.
Right.
Now we'll move on to, I don't see anybody here, but are there any citizens online or looking for input?
We have none online.
And we have no special matters tonight, so we'll move to business items. 7A, City of Minnetonka Climate Action and Adaptation Plan Overview.
Yeah, thank you, Chair Ingraham and Park Board members. So a few meetings ago, we did talk a little bit about sustainability and climate, and felt that it would be a good idea for the Park Board to hear more about what the city is doing, some of the initiatives and programs, and especially focusing on the Climate Action and Adaptation Plan, we also call it the CAP, that the council approved in 2024. So we have Allie Sutherland. She's the sustainability coordinator for the city. She's been here for almost a year, a little less than a year. And so she'll be presenting on the plan tonight. We have Julie Wishnack, our community development director, here as well. She's been very involved, so probably could answer questions as well if you have any. But I'll just turn it over to Allie. She'll present. There's no action on this item, so this is really for information and questions.
Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Excuse me. Allie Sutherland, Sustainability Coordinator. Thank you to Leslie and you all for inviting me here. As Leslie mentioned, I've been here since December, so not quite a year, but it's been really fun to be in this role. I was previously working for the city of Inver Grove Heights in a very similar role. But I did grow up in Minnetonka, which I might have mentioned to a few of you. So it's been really special and fun to come back and work for the community that I was raised in and have family still living here as well. So my position is housed within the planning division, just to kind of give you an idea of where I work. And then the planning division is within the community development department. And my role is predominantly focused on the climate action and adaptation plan implementation with some other, work mixed in, but generally speaking, that's where most of my time is focused on. And then I'm also the staff liaison to our Sustainability Commission. So I'll talk a bit about that group as well later. So, awesome. So for the overview, I'll be talking about 20-25 minutes today. I'll first talk about how the city embraces sustainability, and that kind of falls into one of our strategic priorities that the city has. It's the sustainability, resilience, and natural environment priority that Leslie maybe has talked to you about in the past or you've heard of. So we'll go through some highlights of stewardship over the years that Minnetonka has done related to sustainability and this strategic priority in general. We'll talk about who's involved in all that work. Then we'll get into the climate action and adaptation plan, and then talk about kind of next steps and where we're at with that implementation, what we've done and where we're headed. So talking about highlights of stewardship. So the sustainability, resilience, and natural environment priority is one of 6 strategic priorities. This is selected by the City Council, and then staff selects action items in order to achieve the desired outcomes that the City Council sets up. It's a 3-year work plan, so right now we're in the first of the 3-year series, I believe, the 2025 through 2028. And this just helps to set priorities for our work and helps just drive the outcomes of our work as staff. So City Council sees this as a priority of our work, but we know that the community also values this work based on regular surveys that we've received results for both residents and businesses. And I was really excited to see how engaged businesses are on this too, because that's not normally something that you would expect to see maybe, but in Minnetonka it is real, and I've seen the results. So that was really exciting to see. And then also wanted to make a note that although it is a current strategic priority of the council to focus on sustainability in this realm, it's also something that's been happening for decades. And even despite having, various distributions of whoever's been on the council over the past decades, it's remained something that the city has been consistently committed to. So this is an example timeline that I've created. It's certainly not comprehensive. It's just meant to call out some highlights over the years that demonstrate that the city has very intentionally been a leader in this space, has been consistently dedicated, and just wants to be a steward for both sustainability, resilience, and natural environment. You can see here, I'm not going all the way back in time, but as early as 1976, I've been told that our city made an intentional stance to go above and beyond federal and state regulations for wetland protection in 1976. So I think that's pretty indicative of how the city wants to be an early adopter in this space. Same with the 1989 organized recycling, curbside recycling for our residents and I believe businesses as well. If it's not just households. But in general, you can look now, and there are cities that are still not doing this, even neighboring Minnetonka or locally. So it, again, just kind of goes to show how Minnetonka has wanted to be an early adopter of these practices. Same with the Tree City USA designation for tree preservation. Even in 2008, there was the U.S. Conference of Mayors Climate Protection Agreement signed, which is quite early on in terms of climate action work. Again, I'm not going to review all of these, but just some other highlights. Minnesota Green Step Cities, we began participating in 2013. The Sustainability Commission that I'm the staff liaison to, that body was created in 2021. And then I did include some natural resources and parks related items on here that you may recognize. One of the more recent ones was your post update, the Parks, Open Space, and Trails Systems Plan in 2022 you might recognize. So And then, I also wanted to showcase some more recent stewardship examples with actual like quantifiable results that we have. Starting in 2022, anywhere between that year and this year, we have installed 6 public electric vehicle charging stations. You might have seen those on our city campuses. So 3 are the fast charging infrastructure, and then the other 3 are just the level 2. But they're located at Williston, our city campus at City Hall, and then also the community center. So we have 6 of those. We have 5 electric vehicles within our fleet. We adopted the Climate Action Plan in 2024. We have 3 solar arrays that are, if not installed, they're being installed through the public on the Solar on Public Infrastructure Buildings grant process that we went through, and the city helped to subsidize that. So we have 3 solar installations as of this year, and then we recently, as of February of this year, have enrolled just over 2,700 residents in curbside organics recycling. So that's a lot for just having started, and I think it goes to show that it's not only the city that wants to participate, but we clearly have residents that want to participate too. And I will say, after talking to Darren, which he is here, he's told me that I think that the number is higher than we initially anticipated, which is really a great problem to have, in my opinion. So who's involved? We have several groups involved. So City Council, in terms of the leadership and policy direction and decision making, they are the decision makers in this case. We also have commissions. We have our Sustainability Commission and then Park Board, for example, related to park items. Those are our recommending bodies. They make, they're the advisory boards for this sort of work. We have partnerships with other governments. So the state of Minnesota, fortunately, is extremely supportive of climate work. Not all local governments have that benefit to have a state that is also supporting your own local priorities. So we are very fortunate in Minnesota to have that. And then Hennepin County is also very supportive of this work. I've come to learn that they have their own climate department with, I believe, over 7 or 8 staff working on this, which is really exciting to see. And they also have grant opportunities that come out of that. Leslie's team works more with our 4 watersheds within Minnetonka, but it just goes to show that it's really not only the city working on this work, and it really does take a village and deep collaboration between all these different government bodies to make a difference. Every city department is involved in this work as well, and I just have a handful of staff up here. It's certainly not comprehensive, but myself and Leslie as a natural resources manager working on this. We have the city forester, facilities manager. Darren, the streets and parks operations manager, is also our recycling coordinator, and we have a water resources program manager. So there's a lot of diversity here, and all of us fall within different departments. So have collaboration equals success, because I've come to learn that in this work, in order to be successful, it is fundamentally needed to have collaboration between departments. If you don't have that, you really cannot move this work forward. And that was something that I noticed as soon as I got to Minnetonka, how people here as staff recognize this as a priority. They understand it's a city council priority, and they're just ready to collaborate. And that allows us to move so much more quickly to actually implement work. So it's a really fun place to be working because of that. In terms of the Sustainability Commission, so again, it was established in 2021 as an advisory body. So their duties are as assigned by city code. There's the code language is a bit more lengthy than this, but I've summarized it within 4 different components of their roles. So first and foremost, they're sustainability advisors to the city council. So they're reviewing and creating and advising on plans, programs, and policies for the city council to essentially consider their recommendation. The priorities are pretty expansive again within the city code, but between 2021 and this year, we've focused mostly on climate action topics, energy efficiency, clean energy, and solid waste. And that's more based just on regional priorities that we're seeing in our own city priorities. And in 2026, we're working on the draft work plan right now for the commission, but It will focus predominantly on the climate action and adaptation plan, which in a sense actually focuses on those previous priorities. It's just more consolidated and organized going forward. Another role that they have is that they are sustainability ambassadors. So when they're appointed to this position, they know that they're going to be volunteers, and they're really excited. They're extremely passionate residents of Minnetonka, and it's so fun to work with them. They come out to our events. They're our face of sustainability, and it's so much more impactful, I think, when you talk to your neighbor that's doing this work and encouraging you to do this work, other than, if you're talking to staff, it just maybe feels like an interaction between staff and from government and yourself. So it's really important to have these folks on board with us. They also kind of act as just like a neighborhood champion, if you will, for their neighborhood related to sustainability topics. That kind of blends into the third action, is to cultivate these community relationships. So not only are they connecting us with other residents that they might know, but if they frequent businesses, if they're a part of a place of worship, for example, if they're familiar with a food shelf or that sort of thing, like just trying to help us get more connected with the community, because as you'll learn, we really need these community connections to make this work successful. And then lastly, we do have a work plan every year. It's just to keep us on track. We only actually meet 6 times a year, every other month. So that work plan is pretty important to prioritize our work, and that is approved by our city council, and we report on that every year, just to kind of keep track of where we're at. So now I'll dive into the Climate Action and Adaptation Plan. So this plan began development in 2023. We utilize a very extensive engagement process. So we had a consultant on board that specialized in climate action planning and framework. So they assisted with this process. There were staff work groups, which I believe were about between 20 to 30 staff that were a part of these. And there were many, many meetings, collecting everyone's feedback. We also had several months of community engagement, so that all happened within 2023. 2024, in April of that year, this plan was approved by City Council. And what I've come to learn is that this guide is created for the community. So while we do have information and actions related to our city facilities, there's a common misconception that this is just our city facility or organization plan. It's really meant to guide and inform the entire community on how they can participate in climate action. Climate change is a very deeply complex issue. It includes, multiple aspects of life, such as our energy systems, public health, food system, transit, building performance. It's a really big topic. It's global, as we all know, too. So it can get very overwhelming as a business owner in Minnetonka, or one resident in Minnetonka, asking, what can I do? So the point of this plan is to understand there's no simple fix, but it's to consolidate this complex issue into actionable actionable tasks that you as an individual can take to make a difference. Looking at this plan, staff prior to me were very intentional about creating the checklists that I actually handed out, and we'll go through those in just a little bit to make it easy to, as a resident or business owner, to open this plan and understand, what can I do today? What can I do tomorrow? What can I do 5-10 years from now to feel like you're empowered to be able to make those decisions. So let's see. So this guide breaks down that action into 2 different actions. So we have mitigation. You'll hear when talking about climate action, there's mitigation, there's adaptation. Mitigation is to slow the growth of greenhouse gas emissions, so to reduce the amount of emissions that we're producing. And eventually, we want to transition away fully from fossil fuels. So that's the fossil fuel gas that we're using for building, heating, and cooling. Adaptation is not necessarily related to emissions, but it's adapting to a changing climate, a changing world. So making sure our infrastructure is resilient to that changing world, and then also our ecological systems, which you all talk about in parks. Like when we're developing a new park, are we taking into account that our climate is changing, and we need to think about that when we're planting trees or selecting our native communities that we're planting or maybe rehabilitating. So we focus on both of those topics, and I will say that's actually quite unique. Earlier on in these processes, when other cities were adopting these, they did not focus on adaptation. So natural resources had a big impact, I think, on the development of this plan, and so that's why you're seeing that emphasized so much. And I think, as you all know, Minnetonka, really finds value in our natural resources. So it's very clear to me that, yeah, that of course that would be part of this plan, which is exciting to see. So sections, there's a lot of sections in this plan. It's several hundred pages, I believe, is the full plan. But today I'll just cover kind of the main sections. So the first is existing conditions. So what does our city look like now? What are our emissions? What is the land use in our community, and what are the impacts of that land use in terms of greenhouse gas emissions? Our community profile, we'll talk about that. Goals and targets of this plan, and then the strategies and actions that the plan lays out. So this plan, part of the plan was that it laid out climate hazards that exist today and are anticipated to exist in Minnetonka. So we are already experiencing and plan to continue experiencing hotter summers, which can lead to poor air quality and unsafe temperatures for being outside, for example, like at an event, let's say. Warmer winters we're experiencing and plan to continue experiencing, which leads to icy conditions, heavy precipitation, which can lead to flash flooding and increased hail damage, which I wanted to stop here and just share a quick story. As we all know, if you were home a couple weeks ago, you probably experienced this pretty severe hail damage storm. Well, internally, I sit next to the front desk, and between Julie and our permitting staff, we had, I believe, 52 new businesses came in to receive a soliciting permit to be able to go door to door to households in Minnetonka to do these door knocking. And it was over 192, I think, individuals that are a part of those businesses that got these licenses. And
They all knocked on my door.
yeah, I'm sure.
Everyone.
Yes. And so I just kept hearing how unprecedented that was, how people like Julie, who've worked here for 20 years, have never experienced something like that. So we just felt like that really shows the severity of how severe that event was. And it does make you think that, there's a lot of implications that come with these severe events. The property damage, insurance rates, potentially increasing. Even I was thinking like staff time. I mean, we had Fiona as our permitting, licensing staff, and so her time, she has to do a background check for every single one of those people, and that affects, I believe, the police department. So, I mean, there's, ramifications for these type of events. And then continuing on, prolonged droughts is anticipated and has already been experienced, which can lead to low water levels. And just to summarize, that there's adverse effects on health and safety for residents. It includes workers here, ecosystems, as we know, even recreational activities, which your group probably thinks a bit more about, but sporting events is something that this can affect, and then of course infrastructure too. So just wanted to let you know that I know we tend to think of this on like a global scale, but we know that this is happening in Minnetonka. And I actually recently just attended a meeting with Hennepin County, and their emergency services manager is even thinking about this. So it's not just even, as like a resident experiencing it, like there's every division department thinks about this and how it impacts their work. Let's see. Oh, okay. Community profile. Some of this you may already know, but I figured we could just review it. So in the Climate Action Plan, it gives a kind of a snapshot of what our community looks like. So we have 56,162 individuals living in the city of Minnetonka, and that's population estimates as of 2024. We have 25,240 households as of 2024, again, estimates. Generally speaking, the population of Minnetonka residents on average have a lower poverty rate here, and that's based on the average of the state, which is good in the sense that it actually lowers our climate vulnerability. It also then lowers our average energy burden. So an energy burden is the ratio of income you spend on your energy bills. So generally speaking, average-wise, we have a low energy burden within Minnetonka in comparison to other communities locally. But the Climate Action Plan does note that there are still potentially at least 900 households with a severely high energy burden, which means that they have at least 10% of their income going towards their energy bills. And it's important for us to know this and think about this when we move towards implementation, because we can prioritize implementation to alleviate the burden, that energy burden for these households. We can help provide equal access to home energy efficiency improvements and clean energy for these folks that may not be able to afford it otherwise. So trying to figure out, like, how can our programming assist with those two actions. And another thing to think about is it's not always the case, but it's more likely that these households are probably older and less efficient and haven't been upkept as much. So in terms of emissions and such, they're likely less efficient and probably emitting more emissions there. So there's just a lot of possibilities that can come out of that for us to be considering. In terms of our land use, so we want to think about this in terms of how the space in Minnetonka is used and how our land is used. So 50% of our land is used as residential land use. We have, sorry, these numbers are really small, so we'll read them. What was that?
Institutional.
Oh, yeah. Institutional is 3%, so that would be like our schools. Parks and recreation constitutes 12% of our land. Commercial is 6%. Multifamily is 7%, and industrial is 1%. And after I made this slide, I learned that the agricultural and undeveloped component is likely wetlands. So 11% is wetlands, which I thought this board might be interested in. So this is some of the existing greenhouse gas emission conditions when this study was completed. So this is a snapshot in time of 2021 because that was the available data. As of 2021 in Minnetonka, so this is activities that occurred within the Minnetonka municipal boundary, that emitted 615,000 metric tons of carbon dioxide. So that can be broken down into a few different topics. So 54% of those emissions were due to building energy. Building energy was then divided between commercial and industrial and residential is essentially split. So the amount of emissions that are coming from buildings is both split between residential buildings and commercial buildings. So just kind of showing the impact of that land use that we looked at on the slide before. In terms of the building energy, it's coming from equally, actually, 27% each between electricity and natural gas or fossil fuel gas. So it's split between there. The other 44% of our emissions come from vehicle travel. So that would be either transit or personal vehicles. And then the remaining 2% is from waste. And then again, that's that same graph. So looking back at 2007 to 2021, our emissions actually as a whole community, so this is looking community-wide, reduced by 32%. And it actually included reductions from the building emissions, the waste emissions, and travel emissions. In terms of electricity from buildings, we know that that was reduced, so you can see it here reducing over time. It's due to energy efficiency becoming more normalized. Just when you go to buy an appliance, it's likely more efficient than the 10, 20-year-old appliance that you previously owned. It's also due to cleaner energy sources. So if you aren't aware, Xcel Energy is our only electric utility provider within Minnetonka, and they have committed to the state to be providing 100% clean electricity by 2040, and are already doing that. They're already accomplishing these goals. They've continued to say that they are on track to meet these goals. So it's important to be aware of that, because when we talk about electrification, like switching your heating fuels in your house to an electric air source heat pump, or switching your electric vehicle from a gas-powered vehicle to an electric-powered vehicle, it's because in Minnesota in particular, our grid, our electrical grid, is becoming cleaner, and by 2040 it should be 100% clean energy, which is pretty amazing. And it's really exciting to see that Xcel is saying that they're on track to meet that goal, and that's a state mandated requirement now for the utilities to do that. And then another thing that's interesting is that as this electricity emissions are decreasing, that means that you can see it's actually now lower than these other two sections. So it's actually putting an emphasis now on focusing on gas, or fossil fuel gas that we use for heating of buildings, as well as travel. So going forward, now we kind of, as an industry, like the clean energy industry, they kind of feel as if, electricity is kind of handled. So now we need to convert everything over from being a fossil fuel piece of equipment to now electric powered. But how do we get those remaining, pieces of equipment off of that heating fuels? So, and then you can see some variation in time. That's really just due to temperature fluctuations, if it was a hot or cold season throughout the year. But generally speaking, emissions from heating fuels such as natural gas have stayed consistent from 2007 to 2021. And then travel has generally stayed consistent except for the last little blip there, and that was predominantly because of COVID-19 pandemic. It's still uncertain to see how that will, how those reductions will remain, if they will continue or not. And then lastly, waste has mostly stayed consistent as of the last handful of years. Let me just make sure I covered everything. So this slide is talking about our city emissions, and the slide is to kind of showcase where as a community, or as the city operations, where we fit into our entire community greenhouse gas emissions. And what we found through this study is that the city operations only account for 1% of our entire community greenhouse gas inventory. So although it's only 1%, we know that it is still very important for us to obviously make changes within our city facility. We want to be a leader in this space. We want to show that this work can be done. So we are continuing to do that, and we have done that for decades, as shown in that slide before. Figure 13 on the left kind of breaks down our greenhouse gas activity. This was specifically from 2022. Just over half of our greenhouse gas impact came from our city facilities. A quarter came from water and sewer distribution to our residents' community. And then another quarter came from our city fleet. And then the remaining 4% came from street lights and signals. And then looking at figure 15 on the right, this breaks down non-travel greenhouse gas emissions. So excluding the city fleet section, it's breaking down what are the different segments within the remaining ones. So in this case, it's water distribution and recreational facilities make up the largest sections, I guess, if you will, of the remaining greenhouse gas impacts. So the rec facilities would be our ice rink, our Wilson Center, and our community center, for example, and then the remaining, City Hall is actually called out in there. So just kind of showing that breakdown. So again, just wanted to recognize that, again, it's very important for us to consistently focus on our own facilities, but this also shows the importance of community collaboration and engagement in order to meet our very ambitious climate action plan goals. We did have a population vulnerability study completed as part of the climate action and adaptation plan, and this was essentially to determine which areas of the city would be most vulnerable to our changing climate. Again, this is really small and hard to see, but the first one, the slide on the left is regarding population vulnerability. So the areas that are darker are concentrated to be individuals that most likely fit into different socioeconomic status and what have you, and most likely be more concentrated within those areas. So we can do target outreach, for example, within those areas to try to engage that group. On the right, we have land surface temperature, so areas of red are typically hotter on average, so being aware of that. We have building age on the left, so it's showcasing which buildings are older than others, which relates to energy efficiency and other items. And then lastly, we have flood susceptibility. So these are all included in the Climate Action and Adaptation Plan. And if Leslie's group or the park board ever want to use these for your own work, you're more than welcome to do that. And, you know, potentially as we continue on with implementation, perhaps we will do more of these studies because I think those definitely help with prioritizing our implementation. In terms of CAP goals, so there were two different series of goals. There were greenhouse gas emission reduction goals, and then there was these community resiliency adaptation visions as well. So the first is related to the reducing, so it's aiming to reduce community-wide greenhouse gas emissions by 63% per person per business by 2030, and that's from our 2018 baseline levels. So what that means, I'll try to break that down, is that it means that by 2030, we are hoping that people will reduce their carbon emissions by 6 metric tons by 2030. And I wanted to give you a little bit of a visualization. So we measure carbon dioxide as a mass, but if you wanted to observe it or picture it as a volume, this is what it would look like. It's about 30 feet tall in this bubble. This is another example. It's kind of hard to see here, but you can see that tiny little person on the left, again, about 30 feet high. And they also give some weight equivalents, which again are kind of hard to see here, but in terms of the actual weight of this, it would be like 2 grand pianos, 1 female walrus, a baby humpback whale, 80 bars of gold, if you happen to know how heavy a bar of gold is. I don't, but just some visualizations of like, when we talk about 1 ton, what does that mean? Because this stuff is pretty challenging to, it's not tangible. It's hard to envision. The other thing I wanted you to think about is that the average American, and it differs depending on your economic status and then also where you live within the United States, but on average, an American has a carbon footprint of around 16 metric tons per year. So individually, we are responsible for emitting 16 of those bubbles per year. So going back, our goal is to reduce 6 of those by 2030. So how can you do that? How can you... Nope, by 2030. So I guess you have 5 years to do it. So
Start now.
yeah, exactly.
Reduce it one time or, well, it's
Yeah, I think it's in general. I mean, it's an average, right? We're hoping that looking back at what your emission was in 2018, hoping that you can reduce your carbon emissions by 6 tons by 2030. So based on whatever your levels were at in 2018. And we don't know. We don't all individually know, right? And so when we talk about this, we don't sit there and calculate and talk about these numbers, but it's just more of to get a sense of like this is what it would look like. And actually I do have another slide that kind of helps. So these are different, another entity did this calculation, but they just kind of graphically showed that the one that I have circled is if you were to convert your gas-powered vehicle to a battery electric vehicle, you would then be eliminating 2 metric tons of greenhouse gas emissions per year. That's how much you're avoiding. So, I mean, if you drove that,
Allie and I.
yeah,
We've
right.
done this.
Yeah.
We're doing our part. Yeah.
So in theory, if you drove that vehicle for 6 years, 2, 4, 6, there's your 6 metric tons that you've done your part, I guess. But yeah, we're hoping. I hope that we can maybe get to a point where we're explaining it in some easier sense to residents to kind of really make. I think it helps to see some of those numbers because you can actually feel like, hey, I've done this instead of just being told it's of value. Mm-hmm. So again, 6 metric tons by 2030, and then going back to the bullet points, there's 2 under the greenhouse gas emission reduction. So we have a 2030 goal, and then we also have a long range goal. So we also have this net zero greenhouse gas emissions by 2050. And if you're not familiar with net zero term, It means that essentially no greenhouse gas emissions are emitted, none. Or if they are emitted, they're balanced by a removal of sorts, so like carbon sequestration or what have you. That's the vision for 2050, and a lot of other communities, the state, nationally, that's the goal that people are headed to. So Minnetonka has also committed to that goal through here. We also have another goal to, community resilience and adaptation vision, where we're hoping to then strengthen our community to have resilience against a changing climate, where we're preserving natural resources, strengthening community connections, and then also preparing our infrastructure for this changing climate. And it's kind of hard to envision, like, what does 2030 look like? What would Minnetonka look like if we were to achieve this 6-ton per person reduction goal? And this is what a couple examples that the plan gives. So it says all new buildings will be all electric and as energy efficient as possible. 1 out of 4 buildings will complete an energy efficient retrofit or have switched to electricity for space heating and cooling. 80% of the community will be powered by electricity from carbon-free sources. 1 out of 3 vehicle trips have been eliminated. 1 out of 5 cars are electric vehicles. Every resident has cut their waste by 1.2 pounds, and 75% of our waste is recycled or composted. So just to give you an idea of, like, that's what we're striving for. It's not necessarily that each individual action is what we're looking for, but this is just one example of what the world could look like if we were to achieve our goal. And then in front of you, we have these checklists. So these are the ways that we're really hoping to, make this climate action plan actionable. And we give people a menu of options to say, hey, which one do you want to do? We also, the consultant helped us with prioritizing it in terms of the impact. So you'll see the little icons that show like which impact is more impactful or not. And then on the other side, there's this checklist to say, this is what I'm committing to, and you can write that down. So we often hand this out at community events, and I'm sure over time we'll update this checklist, but this is what we have at this time. So we have another one for businesses as well. And then the municipality has one. And, there's multiple different sections. It includes both our facilities, such as our, city buildings, our fleet, talking about natural resources, so like parkland, resiliency related to that, multi-jurisdictional, so how can we partner with other entities, engagement and education with those other groups. So I would say maybe half of this actually relates to our city facilities, but because it's only 1% of our greenhouse gas emissions, it's really imperative that we get those other groups to work with us and collaborate. So that's a big component of these strategies too in here. And next steps, we have a variety of next steps. I'll be working with the Sustainability Commission to complete a 2026 action plan. Staff will also be completing an action plan. It'll include a variety of things. We'll be meeting more regularly with the Climate Action and Adaptation team that helped to create this. We'll be meeting on more of an implementation basis. We'll continue on with our Sustainable Minnetonka Awards program, where we award businesses and residents and share their success stories. Whole variety of things, resident outreach, business outreach, and definitely developing like development resources. So if a new development comes in, helping them understand how to be in alignment with our CAP. So that sort of thing. But with that, that's all I have for you. So thank you for bearing with me and listening to the Climate Action Plan. We are happy to have more collaboration with other groups such as yourselves. So if you have any questions or comments or ideas tonight or in the future, please reach out to me. Leslie has my contact. But I'm also happy to answer any questions now if the board has any. So thank you again.
Thank you. Very informative presentation. Any questions or comments? Yes.
I just have a quick
Jennifer.
question. Does the sustainability group review the master plans of the park system individual master plans?
Great question. So I can only speak since December, but my understanding is that they do not. Leslie might have an additional answer to that.
Yeah, at this point, we have not had the Sustainability Commission review any of the master plans that we've worked on.
And I think,
And staff?
if I could, sorry, Chair, if I may. I think part of when the structure of the Sustainability Commission was set up, the council didn't envision it as a project review committee. That's kind of like, not like the Planning Commission, but they talked a lot about being ambassadors and being out in the community and getting the impact done with their outreach and education. That was a really big deal to the council at the time. I don't know if that's shifted or not, but that they weren't meant to be a project review committee. That wasn't the intent.
That's where I was thinking, like sustainability of building and remodeling or design.
I think it's inherent anyway. I mean, that is something all of our departments, I think when Ally went through the different people involved in the city, that is always on the front end of any planning project that happens. So we have a lot of conversation and discussion about all of those things.
If I recall correctly, from a natural resources perspective, I think sustainability also looked at the tree, I don't know the right terminology.
Tree ordinance.
But the tree plan and that.
They gave some feedback on
Yeah.
that. Yeah, the tree ordinance has been,
Yeah.
it's a hard ordinance. I mean, that it is one of the tougher ordinances around the metropolitan area, which is for good reason. I mean, we have, I don't know, do we always say 59%?
We love our
I don't know.
trees.
We have different
53.
numbers. 59% tree coverage, 57, whatever. But it's one of the highest, right? So, and it pertains to, I think a lot of people think it's just natural resources, but as a community development person, it's all about our image and our vibe and the sustainability of what I call it's our marketing for our city, frankly, and it's what keeps people here. So that also plays into sustainability. It's not just natural resources or one particular subject matter. So,
Brad?
Thank you, Ally. Really, I know there's a ton of data here to encapsulate, so thank you for doing that in 20 minutes. That was great.
40.
So much of, in my opinion, the sustainability is aspirational. There's a lot of goals, a lot of data to reach this by 2025, by 2030, by 2040. And I noticed in your orange box here on your checklist that one of the items here is about behavioral change. And I'm really interested if you work with any form of behavioral psychologists or people who are dealing with actual behavioral change components to give you incentives, meaning the population in Minnetonka, incentives to achieve some of these goals. Because just saying something like buy less, well, that's going to ring really hollow. That's sort of tone deaf. No one's going to listen to that. But what are the incentives? What are the opportunities in behavioral change for that to happen? I'm wondering if you work in that capacity.
Yeah, I appreciate that. So I think first off, you're noticing how some of these are somewhat vague. You know, when I saw this, I think it's very helpful, and it makes opening up a very long document a little bit more engaging. Do I think this is the only flyer we're going to hand out to the public? No. So I would like to honestly expand on multiple of these. Like I could see materials being designated for each item within here, and then we elaborate to say like what does that mean to buy less. We're hosting events, for example, like our clothing reuse swap. That's an example of actually being able to buy less, reuse and swap items. So, yeah. So, trying to give opportunities for that. We have other nonprofits and other energy efficiency teams that we work with, like Center for Energy and Environment, and they specialize in teaching people about energy behavior changes like that. That includes both residents and businesses. So in that case, we're working with other specialists in that capacity. So yes, it's definitely something that we're working on for sure.
Ask them the question. Okay,
Yeah.
here's a question. How many have taken advantage of the energy audit? Not everybody? Okay, let's do it. So, I mean, that's the point, right? You try to get everybody in your neighborhood, you try to get everybody, and you talk about, I mean, we know what happens. Like, there's great light bulbs, there's, my water heater was wrapped, and that, from the garage to the house, that was weather stripped. I mean, so there's some really cool benefits that you might not know about, but definitely getting the word out about changing how you approach these things. And they're little things, right? But they add up as the list kind of kind of tries to get you engaged enough to do something different. So, working on it.
Caleb?
Yeah, so, I, as a personal consumer, have gotten almost all of my assistance to make significant energy consumption changes in my own family and home through the federal government. And Donald Trump is dismantling that and setting back our climate and sustainability goals perhaps by a generation. And that is kind of, I think, evil towards future generations. And the state doesn't have a lot of financial skin in the game. It's a lot of encouragement as well for personal households to make a lot of these changes in how they use their energy and what they're changing utilities out, or HVAC products out for, or vehicles out for. So when I think about this at the city level, it seems like there's even fewer levers. Now, one was already kind of alluded to with business planning or developments, right? Like I know in housing, most cities have some sort of benchmark of how many units have to be available for low-income members, right? And so I'm curious what levers we're using or could ratchet up in the city to basically have as a integrated component to new builds or significant renovations or tear down and rebuilds, where you can use at those levers, of those instances rather, opportunities to basically say, if you want to tear down a house in this city, if you want to tear down a building and build a new office, or if there happens to be a plot that's empty and you want to build something new, it has to be so future forward on an energy conservation level that if you want to do it here in our community. Now, there's a hit, right? There's a hit to doing that, because you might have people say, I'll do it elsewhere. But is that part of is that integrated? Is that built into what the city does already? Is that something the Sustainability Commission is working on? Because again, those are the only things it seems like most cities can do, other than just educate, encourage. I think the compost has been awesome.
Right.
We love it. Everybody around me is paying for it. We're the only ones with the bin out. I still don't get it, and I think to myself, do you not look at your like trash bill to see like what's this bill here?
For that? For
Yeah.
I wanted to do it.
So
Yeah.
that was great. That's great. But I just hope we're being kind of aggressive and thinking about how to be even more aggressive with city-based levers.
Yeah. I think I'm going to tell you a story about a housing renovation that just recently happened. There was about 40 townhome units, and a developer came in, bought the whole project out. It's a rental product. It's for 30% AMI, which is the lowest income level of our community, probably. That was the best way to describe it. When the new development or the builder came in to own it, there was a contractual obligation to do some rehabbing, right? So there was a basic rehab. There's some funding from the state of Minnesota for low-income properties, that sort of thing. What the city did on top of that is then spend money from our Affordable Housing Trust Fund to then elevate the green infrastructure in the project. And so what we did is try to get more energy efficient appliances, better HVAC, all of those things, which totaled over $1.3 million, I think was the total bill on those things. But not only did that help the environment, it helped the people living in the unit so that their energy bills were lower. So I think that's kind of an example of where the city steps forward, helps kind of take that project to another level. And we're using Affordable Housing Trust Fund money that has been set aside for that very reason. The council, I would say, probably the most aggressive I've seen to try to do these types of things and put money aside for that. So I think that's been going on for a while, but definitely that project resonates with me in terms of what you were saying. Anyway, and a lot of projects are doing it on their own, which is encouraging because they know it's going to save them money. They're not going to build an inefficient building in these times because it saves them, especially if they're a long-term owner. They're not going to make short-term decisions on sustainability matters. You can look at Ridgedale. The solar on Ridgedale is incredible. And they did that a long time ago, even before I would call it more fashionable. I mean, I grew up in the 70s. It was starting to become fashionable then. But, you know, there was just this more, what do I say, a more passionate engagement in putting solar everywhere because it does save businesses money. So to appeal from them on a money standpoint, that definitely has been our angle with the business community.
Other questions, comments? Well, I want to thank you. It was very, very informative, very useful for us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah. Okay, our next item is, when I get back to the right page, is the Shady Oak Beach season summary. Thank you again.
Awesome. I'm going to get started. I'll introduce myself. My name's Chandra Vella. It's my second year managing Shady Oak Beach, and I thoroughly enjoy being out at the beach. One, it's like really fun to, you enjoy the summer more, honestly. I get to be in the warm weather, and I'm not going to complain about that. I love this picture because this was taken this year, so you can see the people on the high dive, you see the people on the Wibbits, there's people on the sand. I mean, the whole beach gets utilized. This year we were able to open, we opened up on June 7th, and we remained open through the 17th of August. So we have a 10-week season. We take that week to pack up the beach, basically. So we set everything up for the beach, and then we have to take that week to get everything put away. And then we opened up to the public free of charge, without lifeguards or concessions, from August 22nd through Labor Day. So that just kind of becomes an open lakefront, a waterfront for that period of time. This year for our staff, we had 53 part-time employees. I did reduce the number this year in gate and concessions to provide more hours to the workers. They do typically want 40 hours. A lot of them are high school and college kids, and they want to pay for college. So that was a great opportunity for them. Most of them took full advantage of that and would pick up other shifts to get that 40 hours. There were overall 150 applicants between all the positions that did apply for the beach this year. We had 23 new hires and 30 returners this year. And I would say for people returning, you'll see the next point says that returning staff do receive a 3.3% increase in hourly wage. I would say that people don't just come back for that increase. They want to come back because they enjoy like the community that we have built within our staff, and they enjoy what they do at the beach. So it's much more than just the pay that they get. They find this job very rewarding. They make lifelong friends. They learn great skills. So it really does set them up for success. We have 6 different positions. We have 2 facility supervisors. We have head lifeguards, shift leads, concession attendants, and gate attendants. These are pictures of our staff this year. And you'll see within a 10-week season, between all the positions, the staff worked about a total of 11,000 hours. And like I said, it's just 10 weeks, but they would probably work more if they could, to be honest. One thing that we really have tried to do is that we have really tried to create opportunities for staff that are wanting it to stay on for the season, like for off season. So this is just for the summer. I work at Williston as well as the membership manager, and I talk to the other managers there, and they look for people to work for the rest of the year. So we offer it to the people that are currently working, and we were able to take 9 people from the summer and bring them onto Williston or at Marina's, Grays Bay Marina, and teach them new skills, help them help them get hours throughout the entire year. And then we hope to be able to bring them back on again in the summer back at Shady Oak Beach. So we're very excited to be able to offer that more this year. We did have, I would say, at least 5 more people that were interested, but we do have limited number that we can bring on. So people are definitely interested in working for the city of Minnetonka. Here's the quick video of our Wibbits. You'll see we have the lifeguards that are kind of testing it out. If it works, we'll see. Okay, perfect. The lifeguards honestly have a lot of fun, but you'll see the Wibbits are for all ages, which is really great. So we really do have all ages that use it. I would say this is very popular amenity with the public. We do get phone calls asking, are you going to have the Wibbits up today? And thankfully this year we were able to have them up. My priority was to get them up every day. I felt like there's no reason why we can't have them up. So we were able to have them up every day from 1 to 5, and in the past, it usually takes about a month to get them really up and going. So we would have them about maybe 2 to 3 days a week, sometimes 4 days a week, and it was due to kind of depended on staffing. So like I said, that was a big priority, seeing as how much of the public they want to come and use those. So and I would say we do typically have a line of patrons that are waiting to get on them, especially as once they're being inflated by the lifeguards have to inflate them, deflate them, hook them all up every single day. We try to get it down to like about that 10-minute window and do it in the safety break where everybody's out of the water. But you have all the kids lining up, and there's like a mad dash to get on the Wibbits. So they are very enjoyable.
Any injuries? I mean, it kind of...
Well, that's definitely why we put lifeguards there. I would say we didn't have any injuries. It would be more, there was like once or twice where maybe a kid fell off or in between and started to panic, so the lifeguard grabbed them and pulled them up, and then they were okay. But
you don't queue them up by size or anything. You just all can go.
Yes. So the lifeguards tell them like, oh, you're good to go now, like, so they have to wait their turn and everything. So that does help, is that they facilitate that to avoid all those injuries for sure. So I'll talk a little bit about safety in our emergency action plans. I would say that safety is probably one of the top priorities for us at Shady Oak Beach. We did have, I hold on to all the papers that are filled out, the incident reports that are filled out. We legally have to hold on to them for a certain number of years. So this year, going through them, we had 17 saves by the lifeguards. So that is literally somebody that is actively drowning and starting to actively drown, and they were able to be rescued within 30 seconds or less, and it didn't amount to anything more. They were okay. And that can look like, that can be from multiple things. That can be from the patron just getting too tired in the water. That could also be from a patron's overly confident when they're like, I think I can make it to the big dock. And they get halfway and they can't make it. It's also, we had somebody that was trying to keep up with their friends. Their friends were like, just come with us. And he was so tired. And it was he was in the water about 2 times and he just went under. and he just couldn't stay up, and they were able to grab him. They watched. They knew he was like a weaker swimmer. They could tell. They keep an eye on those. It could also be somebody accidentally swallowing water while they're playing and they start to panic. That's very common with kids. Or they get a muscle that starts cramping. So it can be a whole number of things that we can't control. So to have the lifeguards there can be very beneficial. We also had 24 first aid assists, so that can range from somebody, we had a lot of bloody noses, somebody vomiting. We did have heat exhaustion because there were days when it's so hot out. We had a couple times where people did lose consciousness for maybe a medical reason. We had bee stings, and the lifeguards are there immediately helping by their side, doing what they need to do to help that person. We do have specific EAPs for a number of incidents. So we have a specific missing person last seen in the water. We have a missing person last seen on land. We have a medical emergency on the big dock, a rescue turning into a medical emergency, or a multi-save rescue. Multiple people can start drowning at once. We also have a spinal injury, for example, from somebody hitting their head on the diving board. So these are all different action plans that we practice and have set up, and so everybody has very specific roles that they play. So when something happens, they know exactly how to take charge and what to do in these roles. So then with that, twice a month, the entire staff, all positions come in from 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. before we open, and we practice these drills and scenarios so that everybody is ready to respond confidently in any situation, that is kind of a lot to ask of teenagers in the summer to come in before work starts. They get paid still, but to run through these serious plans. We'll play a video in just a second. This is one of our EAPs, so one of our scenarios is that what happens if a lifeguard goes unconscious while they're on stand. That's another thing we have to think about. We really try to think about every single thing that we can to try to prevent or know how to go into action when something happens. So we can go ahead and push play. That's okay. Oh, I'll go back. There you go. So for this video, what you're seeing is that the lifeguard, we're pretending this is training for them. So the lifeguard goes unconscious, and what they're doing is that the off-duty guards, they're in the guard shack, they're on their break, they heard a whistle blow, and one person runs down with the tube, and they're at the water ready to grab the person. Another person climbs up the ladder and tucks their hands under the person's armpits and thrusts them forward, because that's kind of the only way to get them in the water.
In the water.
You have to get them in. Yep, so we practice of you have to physically get them out of the way, get them out there, and then that other lifeguard is there ready to scoop them up and swim them in right away, because we don't know, do they not have a pulse anymore? Do they need CPR? And if 911, we're probably calling 911, and they need to help, and they need the person on land as well. So we have to get them off stand and onto the sand as quick as we can.
Have you had that actually happen?
Not this one yet. But we don't want to, but we're still going to teach them, sure, this is what you got to do in case, so we don't panic. So we did have approximately 800 hours of training and prep took place between, the 800 hours was basically all the staff doing preseason trainings, weekly or bi-weekly staff trainings, setting up for the beach, and postseason teardown. So we do take our training very seriously. The great thing about Shady Oak is that you don't have to be a lifeguard. You don't have to be lifeguard certified to become a lifeguard, to work at the beach. So people can apply, and when I do interviews, I interview people that are lifeguard certified right at that moment and people that are not. And then we do offer that training for them. So people that are interested in it, we will train them. and get them that lifeguard certification. And then you also need a waterfront certification to work at an open lake, because it's a different level of lifeguarding. So we provide all that for them. So this year we certified 6 new lifeguards, so people that had never been certified before but were very interested or are looking into like health for their future, and they want to start getting into lifeguarding to see what that brings. And then we had 10 guards that we recertified, so their certification expired. We can get them recertified so that they can get on stand again and help assist the community. In just a minute, I'll show we have 2 videos here. So like I mentioned, we run the EAP twice a month with all the staff, and every staff member has a job. So it's not just lifeguards that play a role. We have at the front gate, we typically have 2 people at the front gate, and 1 person has to stay there and make sure nobody leaves for a missing person. And the other person will run, and we have whistles that have locations attached, and they will grab a whistle and go to these locations and start looking for that child. And then if the child is found, they would blow the whistle so we know they're found, and then they would blow a different whistle. I believe it's 3 tones that this child is found, and now there's a medical emergency with this child. So we can communicate in that way and know what's happening. The same thing will happen with the concessions attendants, is that they'll close the concessions, they will get the whistles, and if all the whistles are taken, then they will head down to the waterfront, and a lifeguard is down there, and they have started the shallow water body search. So they ask for all able and willing patrons to help with it. You link arms and sweep your feet through the water, because you don't know where this child is. Like, did they go to the bathroom and the parent didn't know, or did the child drown in the water? So we do everything we can to try to eliminate and find where this child is. So we can go ahead and play this. So you'll see that's the chain that they make, and so they'll go through the whole shallow end, and then they would go back. So they would keep doing that until we called off the search. And then we would typically have patrons in there as well that are willing to help with that. So once maybe a concessions attendant gets down there and takes over, then the lifeguard that started it, they are going to grab fins and a dive mask, and they're going to help with deep water dives, because we're going to try to check as much of the water as we can. So they are going to get their fins and mask, and they are going to get in a line starting at the big dock, basically touching the big dock all the way to our buoy line if they can, and they're going to dive all the way down, sweep their hands, and come back up. And then they line up again with the furthest person back, and they're going to keep doing that all the way through, and then they're going to turn around and come back. So we can play this for a second. You can see that these 2 things are happening simultaneously. So there's a lot that goes into this, and everybody honestly runs into action as fast as they can. And because we practice it, we do have a number of missing kids because they run off. And if we hear any parent that says, I can't find my child, we're going to activate the missing child's EAP right away, because you can't, with an open body of water right there, like, you really can't mess around and question it.
How often do you have to do that?
Usually once a week there's a missing child at least. We've had 2 in a day. We've had multiple in a week. No. So we do have a different EAP for missing person last seen on land, because typically if they're last seen on land, they're most likely going to be in that area and the person doesn't know they're missing. So we'll announce their name, and then we give the staff 45 seconds. We'll announce it on our walkies, and all the staff come out and start looking quick. And then the person usually hears their name announced, and they usually come out right around that area. So we did that a number of times this year, and the person was found within that 45 seconds. So we didn't have to go through all this, but if they were last seen on the sand or in the water, then we're going to go straight to this. We did have this recognition from a patron this year. I'll read it quick. It says, "I'm not sure who this note should go to, but I want to compliment the staff at Shady Oak for the handling of the incident mid-afternoon Wednesday, June 18th. A child was believed to be missing, and the way the staff handled the situation was exceptional. Clearly, the staff was well trained for a situation like this, and they handled it professionally, calmly, and quickly. After clearing the lake and beach, the staff organized searches in the water. We could hear the directions being given to the searchers and applaud the efforts to increase the search party by engaging some of those on the beach. When the emergency was over, I was so appreciated the lifeguards circulating among the crowd and explaining what had happened. Please know that the professionalism of the staff was observed, and I want the Recreation Department to know what a great job they did today." And that meant, I shared that with the staff, and that meant the world to them. That empowered them of like, this is why we do it. I mean, we do it to save lives and help, and like we make a difference, and people see, like people watch, and I tell them that. So the incident on June 18th happened to be like a large camp came in, and they just did not take attendance very well. So thankfully on our end, we were able to we have our protocol down, so we're able to do everything in our power and follow everything exactly. What it ended up being was they came to us and said, we have a missing child, and they didn't know who it was, anything about them. So all we could do was put this in our missing person in action immediately, and the guards probably did deep water dives, searched everything. We're looking everywhere for at least 15 minutes, which is a lot to ask of the lifeguards. So they were then rotating. We sent tubes out for them to take a break while others dove down. And it ended up being that they realized they counted one of the staff members as a child, and so thankfully they were not missing a child, but you can see when things don't go correctly and you don't have protocols in place, things like that can happen, and thankfully we're able to have those protocols and do everything we can.
That's great.
Yeah. The Twin Cities kind of does the annual lifeguards, so they just did the 2025 annual lifeguard competition. It took place at the St. Louis Park Water Park. This was the third year that they did it. They had 18 teams that participated, and Shady Oak Beach took second place this year. And they are very proud of it. They pride themselves, and I'm sure if they could take the banner home, they would. We competed all 3 years, and since the start of the competition, we've placed first or second each year. To give you a little more insight on what the lifeguard competition is, each team, so we put a team together, and each team is evaluated on their life-saving skills, both in and out of the water, their first aid skills, and their teamwork, and knowledge, and their lifeguard knowledge. So through multiple events, they're watched and graded by multiple LGIs, which are lifeguard instructors. In one situation they had this year was that while guarding, someone started to drown and needed to be saved, while another patron at the same time was sitting on the deck. That patron didn't feel good. They went unconscious and started having a seizure, and then another person started to drown. So it really pushes their limits, and it's only 5 people on the team, and they have to figure out like how to spread out and communicate, and they have to do every practice almost perfectly because they get graded very intensely. So you can see some of the different scenarios that they have where they're doing CPR, they're pulling somebody out of the water on the backboard, they're doing in water save. This year also we had the lifeguard grant. It was the Hennepin County Lifeguard Services grant. It's a partnership with 3 other cities, so St. Louis Park, Crystal, and New Hope. Each city did receive $9,652, and we do have very specific uses for it. So it can go towards training, it can go towards training equipment, such as the CPR masks that all the lifeguards have to have on them, the lifeguard rescue tubes, it can go towards lifeguard chairs, and then it can also go towards things for the lifeguard staff, like the equipment, so the fanny packs, whistles, pocket masks, very specific things, and that really does help to be able to have the lifeguard chairs, they are outdoors all the time, so they don't, after so many years, they don't withstand the weather so well anymore. So we were able to get some new chairs. We were able to get new rescue boards to be able to put more lifeguards out on the water. So this grant was very helpful. In concessions this year, again, we did partner with the 2 local vendors, Boba Tonka, which is like that bubble tea, and then Freeziac, which is frozen yogurt. New items this year were a hamburger and cheeseburger, and those were very popular, and I was shocked. We brought those out just after 4th of July, and it almost became one of the top sellers, even bringing it out around 4th of July. So that was just kind of fun. We do offer individual food items and meal deals at low prices. So we offer candy, ice cream, popsicles, chips, hot food items, sodas, and drinks. And like I said, we try to keep the prices lower. So the most expensive meal deal is $6, which if you're coming with your family to be at the beach, if you're going to go anywhere else to try to feed your family, you're never going to feed them for like each child for $6 anywhere. So it's kind of nice. People know they don't have to pack all their food. They know they can come here and they can get good food and enjoy it. We actually had some calls this year asking, like, do you have your cheeseburgers? Do you have your pizzas? And I was kind of shocked, like, yes, we do. Like, is that why you're coming here today? One of our top selling items is our pizza by the slice, which does make a profit of 76%. So it is great that that's one of our top selling items. In gate and admission, one great thing about Shady Oak is that we do supply life jackets of all sizes for patrons to borrow at the front gate. So this is also part of our safety aspect, is that you would we just ask for an ID or something of value so that we get that life jacket back, because they are expensive. But anybody that wants a life jacket, we will give them a life jacket. Sometimes if they don't have anything, we'll still give them the life jacket. And the lifeguards, what they do is they watch, and like I said, they talk on the walkies, and they'll say they notice weak swimmers, and especially if they notice a swimmer that's in that deeper area near the big dock. If somebody is not making progress forward, that's a large sign that they are getting ready to drown because they are losing steam. If you're not making any progress forward, you're going to continue using your energy in that same place. So they will usually grab a life jacket and bring that out to that person before an incident could occur. We also offer we do swim tests for people, and we try to raise like awareness with families, especially if somebody did start to drown. Maybe we'll ask them to put on a life jacket, and if they don't want it, we'll offer the swim test and say, you know, if you're able to do the swim test, then you can go past those lines, but we don't want you to drown again. So it's just great that we can offer that. This year, one of the big changes is that we did increase the season passes slightly, and we did have a 45% increase in revenue from the season pass from 2024 to 2025. So you'll see that the resident rate for a season pass, so that includes anybody living in Minnetonka, St. Louis Park, or Hopkins. I was like, I just blanked. Or Hopkins. Last year they paid $15, and this year we did $20, so we raised it by $5. And then for non-resident, last year it was $30, and this year it was $35. You'll see that that really didn't affect the sales. We still made the same amount of sales and more. And I was prepping to have people at the front gate pushing back, not happy, and we didn't get that once. We also increased just the daily fee from $6 to $7. And the biggest thing I heard was like, I thought it was $6. And I said, oh, this year we upped it to $7. And they said, okay. And like that was the end of it. So it was great to see that it didn't really deter people, that we still had a large number of memberships sold and people wanting to come be at the beach.
So St. Louis Park qualifies too, you said 3.
Yeah. These are some of the expenses over the years. You'll see the big expense is our personnel, so that's paying for the staff. like I said, I did drop down the numbers in gate and concession from last year to this year, so that did save us some in the personnel. I would say, and I do feel that, well, the biggest expense in personnel is the lifeguards because we have so many of them. But the fact that we're able to save 17 people, to me, feels worth having lifeguards. You'll see our revenues here. You'll see that increase in season passes from 2024 to 2025 with that $5 increase from the non-resident and for the resident. And then I wanted to point out that last year you'll see we closed 4 days for the entire day and we had 5 early or delayed closings. So we would close either due to heavy rain, so it's just literally, it's raining all day, or the temperatures are below 63 degrees because we don't want to deal with hypothermia. People will get that. Or the air quality was above 150, which is very unhealthy for people to be out in, especially, and the staff are out there for 8 hours as well. And then this year we had 7 days we had to close the entire day and 6 where we had to close early or delay opening due to those weather-related incidents. So I do feel that even though we closed more, we still got very close to our numbers last year, which shows like we still had great attendance this year. And we can easily make, just in concessions, we can easily make 500 to 1,000 on a hot day. So if we had been open 2 more days, we could have easily matched or gotten higher than our 2024 concessions. But due to the facility being an outdoor facility, we do face that weather that we can't control, unfortunately. So we do try our best to be open if we ever can, or to delay it so that hopefully maybe the weather gets just good enough and we can open to people. Otherwise, I felt like we had a great season, a great year, and we were very happy with the outcomes this year. That's all that I have for you. Kelly and I would be happy to answer any questions that you guys have at all.
Great presentation. Questions from the board? Comments, questions?
I can start quick. Great job.
Thank you.
Wonderful summary. Thank you so much. I was curious if season passes, if that revenue line also includes the daily passes too.
And that one
Is that
does
all
not
revenue?
include daily.
Oh, okay. Because I was adding it up and just comparing revenues to expenses and curious.
Yeah, that's just the season. So
That's
if
just the
yeah.
season.
Oh, the
Okay.
80,000 just season passes.
Correct.
Got it.
Yes,
Okay.
that's not like your daily guest fee if somebody just wanted to come for the
Yeah,
day.
yeah, okay.
I believe the daily guest fee line item was
No.
about $95,000.
Okay.
Oh,
All
okay.
right. All right. That closes the
Additional-
gap a lot.
Additional revenue,
Yeah,
correct.
that'd be good to add that next year because then
Yeah.
it looks like much less of a cost.
For sure, thank you.
We knew, you've always said, it's always positioned every year as a cost center, not a profit center for the city, which is absolutely fine. For the extra cost at the end of the year, does it get split between Minnetonka, Hopkins, and St. Louis Park? Or
Minnetonka and Hopkins. So Shady Oak Beach is within our joint recreation
Yeah.
division. And so, yes, it is split 2/3, 1/3, 2/3
Yeah,
Minnetonka,
figured.
1/3
Okay.
Hopkins, correct.
Okay, thank you.
And the reciprocal agreement with St. Louis Park is that Minnetonka residents get the resident rate at St. Louis Park's water park.
Oh, didn't know
Oh.
that. Oh, new information.
Yep.
Okay,
Yeah, that's
thank you.
great.
So thank you.
Okay, Caleb.
Do you guys ever have days where it's full? You like can't bring people in, and how many of those occurred this season? And at what point in the day, has that been experienced? If it's happened?
There are days where it feels packed, absolutely. And I've talked multiple times with the fire department. What's hard is that this is like an outdoor facility, so because I've talked about, do we have a limit? And when you look at limits for building, like when you look at limits, it's for buildings to be able to evacuate and get people outside. So what's hard is that it's an outdoor facility and there's so many places that the people can go. They're not contained into the one sand area. They could be in the beach, they could be in the park. There's so many spaces they could go to. I think our biggest concern when we have that many people is if when an emergency occurs, is that we keep everybody, we try to keep people at the beach for a period of time so that emergency services can get in, because if everybody's trying to drive out, they're not going to be able to get into the beach very well. I would say, so that is one of the trickier things that we've come across, and we don't have a good answer for it. Working with multiple departments, we just try to staff as best as we can for these types of days, because it gets hot and everybody wants to be there.
I would say the one thing that we would add is, I know Chandra and the guards do a nice job of looking at the ratio of the people in the water, though. So we were fortunate that we had enough guards to manage the amount of people in the water. I think that was, although we may not have counted everybody, on the grass or the sand, I think in the water is where the focus was as far as looking at ratios.
Yeah, and it's hard to tell maybe somebody, you can't come in because maybe they don't want to be in the water. Maybe they want to be on the sand, on the hill. Maybe they want to play beach volleyball. So our biggest concern is in the water. So the head lifeguards are counting periodically the number of people in the water to be able to make sure that do we need to put 2 more guards out? Where's there the most number of people in the water, we're going to place a guard around that area to try to prevent any incidents.
If I could just add, so obviously Shady Oak Beach is a real gem in our park system. From a lake perspective, it might be interesting for you guys to know, Shady Oak Lake is considered probably our highest quality lake in the city. Even in the region. It's really a lot of spring-fed water. It's relatively deep compared to other lakes that we have in the city. So it's a very high quality lake. It is within the jurisdiction of the 9 Mile Creek Watershed District, which is a special unit of government that focuses on water quality. And so the city and the district both routinely monitor water quality in this lake, which is, part of the reason why this is such a high-use lake. It has very nice water quality. It's clear. It's relatively clean compared to other urban or suburban lakes. We have been tracking Eurasian milfoil, which we first noticed in the lake in 2019, and it has been expanding along the edges especially. And a lot of our urban lakes have Eurasian milfoil, which is considered a non-native invasive species. But the city's been partnering with the 9 Mile Creek Watershed District in actually managing that aquatic plant. So, I always want to give a shout out to the district. They are putting resources into helping to protect and improve the water bodies in our city, and at least that are within their jurisdiction. And so they've been actually contributing and doing some treatment of the milfoil. And it may not seem to be related, but if it were to expand and you get vegetation in areas where people are swimming, it can become a concern. So, just making sure that that's kept in check and not, interfering with the use of the beach there. So.
Thank you. A question on that. Were there any days where the beach had to be closed because of E. coli contamination like in other places?
Not this year. And right away, within that first month in June, there were at least 2 or 3 other lakes in the Twin Cities that closed for E. coli or blue algae, I think it was. And so people called us asking if we had anything, how our numbers were, because we do test I believe 3 to 4 times throughout the season to see where our numbers are at, and they were all each time this year they were great, where we were never concerned or close to being concerned at all. So that drew people in as well, because it is that spring fed, so it helps keep that E. coli and some of the other stuff away.
Well, I want to thank you. It's a great presentation. You and your team do a great job. It's a real summer asset and very popular, obviously, and safety is job one there. So what you shared was very impressive. Well, thank you. One question: do you have an idea what the ratio of resident to non-resident season passes are? Just as a percentage, not dollars, but percentage.
My best guess is 70-30 resident, 70
Okay.
resident.
That's good. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Great job.
All right, our next item is 7C, which is our restoration plans.
Yes,
Leslie.
thank you, Chair Ingraham and Park Board members. So as you are aware, we are bringing, or we're developing park restoration, these are habitat restoration plans, to the Park Board for review. We have, actually you reviewed a few this past spring. Our intended cycle is to really do these in the fall so that we have them available and completed before we start initiating restoration projects, and so Matt will talk more about that. But we have 4 that are slated for restoration dollars next year. This is in our CIP identified, and so it's Civic Center, Victoria Evergreen, Kinsel, and Minnetonka Mills parks. And these parks are identified. We have a priority list in the Natural Resources Master Plan that we're generally trying to follow, so we're basically working down the list. And so as we're working down, we're kind of developing these plans that we want to bring to the board for review. So this is for information, and certainly questions. We'll take questions on these. There's no formal action. These are living documents. They're always going to be changing as conditions change in the field. So there's no formal adoption that we're looking for. It's really information and feedback. And I'll turn it over to Matt.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair Ingraham, Park Board. Back with another round of restoration and maintenance plans. We've been lucky enough to sort of formalize this process. We're still ironing out some kinks as we go along here, but I feel like the development of these documents, how we look at the sites, has been evolving. We're becoming more efficient with how we perform this restoration work, what we're seeing in the field in terms of responses from our natural resources communities. So it's really been an amazing process, and glad to see it's sort of institutionalized in the city through you folks certainly, and through our leadership that's funding these efforts. It's really been spectacular. So the idea with these restoration plans is to present a habitat restoration vision for each park. So we're going down the list as Leslie mentioned. These really serve as a planning and management tool that allows staff to determine how best to prioritize our resources. So we have several pots of resources to pull from. We have a very robust volunteer community. We have staff availability in terms of performing the work, and then we hire the rest out with, frankly, our growing bench of restoration contractors and consultants in the area. So what we do with these plans is to identify restoration management units. These sort of lay out a process of how we go about restoration in chunks of time, essentially. These are living documents, just like these ecosystems are living. We have a good idea of how it's going to respond, but there are certainly particulars, site access, visibility overall. There's a variety of criteria that we consider when we make these changes in the living ecosystems of our community. We leverage the volunteer community early and often during this process. Thankfully, we're earlier in these plans going out, but that allowed for some less time with the individual groups. But now is the time of the year that these community groups are working on their buckthorn removal. So putting this in front of you folks tonight sort of triggered this feedback that we're already getting from the volunteer communities, and they'll certainly be responding to these documents and offering advice. And then I really like working with them when the work gets rolling. They're boots on the ground, literally in a lot of cases. They know the residents around these parks. They help to communicate these efforts, and they're really just wonderful resources overall. And these documents serve as a communication goal. So they really we've passed this tipping point where folks generally understand what restoration is about, why we remove buckthorn. I no longer get angry calls of why did you cut that green tree down. Generally, folks understand what we're doing, but these do function as communication tools to the community. We try to balance this line between these being jargony technical documents, but more layperson available in terms of accessibility about the process and what to expect out of the park systems, why we target certain plant communities, how it's going to change during the restoration project, those sorts of concerns. So one term I'm going to use quite a bit, and you'll see in these documents, is target plant community. This is the ideal plant community for our direction of restoration. This is sort of if money and resources weren't part of the process here. Ideally, this is where we'd be moving, but it helps us decide what sort of structure the plant community would take over time, what we need to remove and introduce to get towards these ideal plant communities. We often think a lot about sun and shade conditions, what healthy plant community elements are there now. Do we have a strong, robust canopy versus an open area where there's a lot of sun, where prairie or oak savanna might make a lot of sense. So we choose these plant communities based on the work that's occurred in the past, the existing conditions in terms of the density of the invasive species, the surrounding land uses. So we talk a lot about where we want the residents to see their money in action. We understand that the folks see the parks via our trail systems and our roads often, so we want to make sure that our restoration dollars are highly visible. These key intersections in a lot of the trails end up being spots where we'll start a restoration project to make sure that restoration effort is evident out in the field. So those are some of the key criteria when we're describing and figuring out which the target plant community should be. We also think quite a bit about climate change and pressures on the land via climate change. So we're moving towards more plant communities that can rely on fire and prescribed fire as a management tool, knowing that that's a highly efficient process for performing this maintenance. But it also is very relevant to the plant communities that are ultimately drought tolerant and can survive some of the pressures of climate change. These native plant communities where the conditions are right are very resilient to climate change and the pressures that are applied. So I'm going to go through each park relatively briefly, just one slide on each, just highlight some of the features of the parks if you're not familiar with them. So Victoria Evergreen is primarily a trail system in the woods. It's a really beautiful canopy. There's no active recreation in this park, no ball fields or anything to that effect, and it'll stay a natural resources gem. There is a lot of potential for oak savanna at this park. There's been a significant amount of volunteer work. I got initial comments from a volunteer out there saying that we should be showing even more potential oak savanna on the eastern side of the park here that we show as oak woodland, and he certainly makes the case that there's more sun on the ground there to move towards an oak savanna rather than an oak woodland. So we use the term woodland when we have more of an existing almost full canopy versus savanna, which is a mix of canopy trees but a lot of sun on the ground, so we can get a lot of native grasses and perennial forbs going. So getting feedback right away about expanding oak savanna and Victoria Evergreen. Yes, Ann?
Can you remind us what is the cultural area? I've only been there a couple times. I don't remember what.
It's a little piece of turf grass.
Yeah, there's a little mown turf grass, and there's 4 or 5 picnic tables in there and a wall of buckthorn around it. It does get used. There is seating in there, so we do see people just go and hang out and have lunch out there. So we do like to prioritize opening those up a little bit more and making them more welcoming. I didn't frankly know about it either until more recently. I walked the trails plenty, but didn't even realize that there was this, we call it cultural because of the turf grass and the tables there.
And there's a little, looks like a caldera in the middle of in between the orange and the green. What is that?
Wetlands?
It's a wetland, yeah.
That's that really big wetlands right by the little boardwalk.
Yeah, there's a boardwalk that crosses on the northeast, and yeah, it's.
Okay, so the gray stuff is wetland.
Yeah, for these we focus on the upland plant communities.
Yeah.
In the document, the wetlands tend to be.
Sometimes they're delimited as blue on some of
Yeah.
the land sites.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. We're working on some mapping consistency through this process. We divvy this effort up amongst our restoration staff.
I could tell they were written.
Yeah.
We're working on a more consistent template.
It's great. Just move on.
Just the visual language as a communication tool. We want to be able to flip through these, and you're getting sort of the same messaging. So yes, it's on our to-do list. Okay. Speaking of which, the Civic Center Park.
Sorry, Matt. Can I just ask another question about about that one? So in what ways can the restoration piece help with, like the southern trail along the wetland that's often muddy or maybe even partially underwater or significantly waterlogged. How does that play into kind of different efforts and focus of both time, materials, volunteer, without too much, disturbance? You don't necessarily want to berm up this whole area or something, but it's definitely a consistent problem.
Yep. So generally, that falls under the park maintenance dollars. So we like to separate these restoration dollars from the park maintenance. But what ends up happening is during this restoration process, we identify those better, and we're often having to go into repair trails that get damaged during the restoration process. Just recently, we did significant woody removals at Meadow Park, and that led to some trail restoration work that we had to do after that. So we end up doubling down. We know there's a lot of activity happening in these parks. We'll note trail conditions and then roll out our crews to repair those as necessary. So it sort of just generally shines a spotlight on these particular parks when this work happens. We just have staff out there. We assess and quantify what needs to be repaired as best as possible. Civic Center, everybody knows this well. It's really a mix of isolated plant communities, but they are essentially very high visibility. We have boardwalks and trails that connect to other parks, so Jadana to the west, and some residential neighborhoods to the northeast. Here again, like many of the parks we talked about recently, we have this very significant ecological corridor of Minnehaha Creek. So birds and insects and wildlife are going to move along this ecological corridor of Minnehaha Creek. So that gives us an opportunity to leverage those plant communities and focus on restoration for increased diversity along that creek corridor. We just know there's quite a diversity of plants and animals that are going to be moving up and down that creek, and really focusing on some oak woodland restoration towards that creek. Very beautiful bridge that crosses the creek there. A lot of foot traffic coming and going from the back of the Civic Center there. North of the marsh, we have a high-quality prairie restoration. Before the city owned the marsh, they were doing prairie restoration work out there. So our effort is lighter in terms of us maintaining, adding diversity, and managing that, but really making sure that that's a focus so we don't allow it to degrade into invasives at all. So a lot to do here. There are some sort of funky islands. They're not quite islands, but out in the wetlands, you can see the buckthorn from the road. They're harder to access. They're lower priority because they're impossible to get to, and they're a little lower visibility. But we'd like to tackle them eventually. That's where these documents come out that 5-10 years when we're revisiting these, what did we do in 2026 versus what could be enhanced upon or push the limits further in the next iteration of these plans. Questions about Civic Center?
Was there a map that showed the areas that you're going to work on? Like in the other one you showed us, I think there were some circles about here's where we're going to focus.
Yeah, so in the document we have like initial priority areas.
Yeah. Okay.
And that's for us to, when we start walking with contractors, we like to say, hey, we want to spend a bulk of our resources in terms of budget and focus in on these locations, knowing that we'll have to reassess during the process. How far did we get? Did we not get far enough? Do we need to expand those? But it gives us a good place to start those conversations with the contractors. Yes, Dave?
While we're on this chart, any thought or possibility in the across the creek, the oak aspen woodland, of ever being able to add some small loops in there or not? Because it's really pretty, but it's really dense.
Well, these restoration and maintenance plans and the CIP budgets allow us to really take another look at our park systems in terms of trails, where trails make sense. For instance, Hilloway Park, which was in the first batch of these, we're about to mow a new trail in.
Oh, great. Where is that going to be? On the
west side.
West side? Great.
So the west side of that park is essentially new park. It was so choked with buckthorn and prickly ash and invasive species, you couldn't walk through there. Now, via this restoration process, it's really open. We're still in the process of managing buckthorn resprouts, but it's really trending towards prairie and oak savanna. So we have an opportunity to cut a brand new walking trail in there.
That's
so
great.
We're going to see opportunities like this after that buckthorn comes down where does a new trail make sense? And we want to ideally lay out that trail where it makes sense rather than allowing footpaths to develop, which they would.
Yeah.
But yeah, we view these as opportunities to, and that's why we do these plans prior to the master planning.
Mm-hmm.
So we would then identify what's open and what could be an opportunity for additional trails.
Well, I guess I'll put my plug in here before we get to Minnetonka Mills. We've talked about this, but this section in the, what's the dark green?
Oak
Woodland. The Oak Woodland above the pink cultural area, there's that informal path there now. And when you throw in Minnetonka Mills, where there is no real good path, what's spectacular is the visibility of the creek.
Yep.
And especially at Minnetonka Mills because there's no cattails.
Yeah.
But as we're doing the restoration, really thinking hard about opportunities to open the creek up from a more accessible, use visitor, because it really is, the biggest area is obviously Jadana and Mooney and stuff, but they're so overgrown with all the cattails, you can only get a couple spots you can see the creek. This is different. It'd be really nice.
Absolutely. We've had some visionary leadership at the city decades ago now, where we were buying parcels in Big Willow, parcels in Minnetonka Mills, which I'll show in a second, and making sure that we're getting folks to the creek edge to experience that. We're very fortunate to have those opportunities. So absolutely, these restoration plans and leveraging the ecological value of the creek and how we can get folks down there to experience that is really good.
And don't forget the future bridge to cross to Mooney.
Yep, ahead of that northwest corner there. Yeah.
That's another
It's a master planning conversation.
Thank you.
Kinzel, this is over by Glen Lake Park. This is primarily a wetland. There is a boardwalk that moves through the park here that was unfortunately underwater for several years due to an outlet issue south of here. But that's since been cleaned up. Out of the post plan a couple years ago, it was identified that more boardwalks through wetlands would be appropriate for the city. There's a good opportunity at this park to sort of showcase what that experience could look like. So we do have a lot of high visibility coming off of Excelsior Boulevard to the northwest here. We do have a almost botanic garden of volunteer work in the mixed deciduous area there. There's quite a high diversity of plants and a lot of hours spent there from a volunteer.
A lot of name tags.
Yeah, little signs. Yep. So it is a little bit of an arboretum out there to some degree. But just enhancing that walking experience in what is primarily a wetland with a little bit of park sliver around it.
What's the city's perspective on, once it all freezes up, that blue wetlands south of the boardwalk is all cattail trails? Is that okay use? You guys have a problem with that?
In the winter?
I'm sorry?
Are you referring to in the winter?
Yeah, in the winter. I mean, once it freezes up, I mean, there's just all these great little paths that go out onto the lake.
In the past, we haven't sanctioned, trails in the wetland. We can't call them city infrastructure.
No, but
what are we going to do about it, Dave?
Are you talking about dogs and?
No, I'm
if
just
there are
talking
dogs
about.
out there, will they pick up the waste?
No, I'm talking about people that snowshoe and cross country ski, and some people have dogs, but there's just a ton of people that like to go out on the Glen Lake.
I find it similar to the lake freezes over. People walk out and.
Yeah.
Thankfully, we don't have people driving out here. Maybe we do, but
And there's no regulation that would regulate that kind of activity.
Yep.
I'll keep doing it then.
That was the question.
Pick up your dog.
That was.
And finally, Minnetonka Mills Park. Again, this ecological corridor, the Minnehaha Creek. Certainly, the Burwell House and the grounds around the Burwell House. We have quite an opportunity along the creek corridor to open more views. Some of those trees have gotten a little tall and have sort of choked the view from that intersection there. And as you drive by, being able to see the Burwell House, I feel, is a bit of a priority. But leveraging our opportunity to enhance the creek corridor and its diversity. from an ecological standpoint while opening views of that historic house are really an amazing opportunity. And then as Dave mentioned, to the west there, it's parkland that's basically inaccessible at this point. So looking at doing some work to the far west to open that for some future trails possible. And the yellow, the Oak Savannah along Minnetonka Boulevard, that's where we did buy some home properties about a decade ago. And that's all turf grass now, so those could represent a fairly easy opportunity to install native prairie grasses in those areas. Spraying out the turf grass and eliminating that is a lot easier than buckthorn or these very aggressive invasive species. So using that as an opportunity to do some what we call soft landings. So there's a lot of big mature oak trees there, to have a diversity of native plants underneath where those caterpillars and other critters can fall off and have an area to nest and bed rather than getting mown up under the turf grass. So it offers a really unique opportunity to do some fairly easy oak savanna restoration.
And it would reduce mowing, which would
And
be
it would
good
reduce
for
sustainability.
Help Darren's budget.
We're all working together. Yeah.
And, yeah.
Hey, this is where, if I could put a plug in, you guys drive by that all the time. And on the street, because of the grade, what you see where the yellow is for the Oak Savannah, you just see sort of like a top of a little ridge line, and don't realize if you just get out of your car and walk, or park and get out of your car and walk, up to the top, you look straight down onto the creek, and the creek, like I said before, there's no cattails, there's no, you see the creek. It's really, really pretty.
And there's really no trail connection from the bridge that gets you easily down this area or would encourage visitors. So many people come and like take prom pictures over here. Yeah. They'll go to the bridge and then they'll be like, oh, I guess that's it, and turn around.
Yeah.
But they are missing out on opportunities. I helped design this garden a decade ago now. And I remember at that point looking across, thinking at some point we could do restoration on that other side and get people over there. So.
And there's a bench on the north side of the creek in the dark green. Is that a city bench?
Yeah. Oh, up here? Yes.
Yeah. How do you get to that?
Yeah. So it's the end of this cul-de-sac.
Oh, that's how you'd walk down that?
Yep. It's the end of this cul-de-sac. We own this bit of land in here now. There was a house here that we purchased, and there's just a random bench in the middle of a turf lot. That would be an opportunity to do some natives in there as well.
Lonely bench.
Yeah, lonely bench. It's a nice little spot, though.
You've been everywhere, Dave.
I just about have.
Questions about Mills Park?
There's a lonely bench.
Yeah.
Let's see. Look at.
So open to any more questions. Otherwise, our recommendation is to provide
Questions or comments?
Yeah.
Ann?
I'm imagining some giant poster somewhere in somebody, or printout in somebody's office of every park and what year it's in. And
It's not a poster. It's a very alive database. So we use ArcGIS.
Okay.
And we're adding polygons of what work's happening when, and it's a very robust data tracking system. How to turn that into deliverables. We use it for reporting, certainly. We use it to get cost estimates from our contractors. We use it to send out to our crews on what to do. But it's not a nice, neat
Oh, I'm sure not.
overall.
I just was trying to imagine from a project management standpoint how you would keep track of all that, and I'm sure that there's some pretty sophisticated software to do that. So.
Yeah. And this GIS, it's a database of activities, but it's also mapping capabilities. So that's where these maps are coming from. So we're actually mapping these out. We have them as a living layer, data layer, in a geographic system. So.
Very good.
So we can track the target plant community, but also the work task. So if it's going to receive seeding, or is it initial buckthorn removal or secondary buckthorn removal, we're constantly tracking.
And is there also a layer for results? I mean, so this worked, this wasn't so good.
Ideally, the steps would highlight that it was successful. So we'd go from initial buckthorn removal, secondary, plant seed install to monitoring and maintenance.
I understand those are the tasks that you would do, but then is there also like comment space or something to?
Yeah, we've in the past collected lots and lots of comments and pictures of stuff out there, and sorting through that and making sure we're efficient in terms of the data collecting. We're working on that with staff. Because we have a lot of interns that come and go, or seasonals that come and go that perform work, and we want to make sure that the data is nice and legible for the future.
Well, and we've been working on this for a long time, and we've learned a lot.
Yep.
And
yes.
we don't want to lose any of that institutional knowledge.
Absolutely. Yep. Absolutely.
Well, I want to thank you. I think it's interesting because these are all, 3 of these parks are pretty small.
Yep.
But they're each unique and are really worthy of good restoration efforts. And the Civic Center, I think most of us, or at least I generally always think about it largely as you guys would call cultural, between buildings and offices and arenas. But there are, pockets of some really potentially high impact natural areas. So I'm glad you're really focusing on that. So.
And even pockets are important for insects and being able to move around.
Yeah. Well, like Kinzel. I mean, Kinzel's near me, and we go there quite often. And it's really small. It's if the boardwalk wasn't there, it would be tiny because you couldn't do a loop. But it gets a lot of use from those local residents, particularly out of those apartments and that. So it's really nice, especially in the winter. Yeah. Thank you. Okay, so that brings us to item 8, the reports from staff.
Yes, thank you. So our first item is an update on the Lone Lake Park Mountain Bike Trail, and I will turn that over to Jesse over there, who's been waiting patiently.
Yeah. For those of you that don't know me, I'm a program manager for the City of Minnetonka in the Recreation Department, and one of the things I oversee is the mountain bike trail, and specifically the relationship with MORC, or Minnesota Off-Road Cyclists, our local chapter here, which is really just a group of passionate mountain bikers. I also was heavily involved in just the planning process for the mountain bike trail, the implementation of the mountain bike trail, so I've kind of seen it through its process. And really happy to say we are reaching that 5-year anniversary mark of the trail being open. So it's fun to be here with you guys today. For those of you that are aware, this used to be a more robust report that was presented at the joint meeting with Council and Park Board. And last year was asked to be moved to Park Board as an annual information item to share with you guys, but then also Kelly asking me here to answer any questions that you guys have specifically about the mountain bike trail. So for those of you that have seen the previous reports, you'll see this is more limited, but gives a really good snapshot of what we're seeing out on the trail. And then also I can talk just a little bit about what we've got in store and what the MORC is currently looking ahead to do. And I say MORC, I would say we probably have a mountain bike trail that has more touch points working with the city than other local MORC overseen trails. So I'm very, on a daily basis, involved working with the volunteers, both out on the trail, but also just through constant communication, because there's a lot that's going on behind the scenes to manage this trail. As mentioned, 5-year anniversary of the trail. This time last year, we were coming up. We had a week left to complete the construction of the mountain bike trail. We had to complete it by the October 31st, and you probably don't remember this, but I do. There was a giant snowstorm that hit, and so we had crews that we were really, hoping they were going to complete this trail before hitting that October 31st point. But we did it, and shortly thereafter, the weather actually turned rather warm, and so we were able to do a soft opening in that November. So it's kind of fun to kind of look at the statistics, and ever since, there's been a lot of data that's been collected because we want to keep close eyes on this to both see usage, but then also the restoration work that's gone into the trail and surrounding area as well. So for those of you that don't know, the trail is managed by a group of volunteers, and we have what we call dirt bosses. Those are more heavily involved volunteers. Most trail systems have 1 to 2 dirt bosses. We, even though we're a smaller mountain bike trail system, we have 16 dirt bosses. So people that are very passionate about the trail. And a big thing that they do is daily we have dirt bosses out there that are sweeping the trail. There's even on a non-windy day, you could have a branch come down or any hazards. So we're constantly checking for any obstructions, any changes to the trail. And then also the big thing is moisture. Anytime it rains of significance, we really don't want people on the trail, both foot traffic and bikers, because that can cause erosion issues and just damage to the trail in general. So we do have gates at all the main access points that are opened and closed based on what the conditions are showing us. So every day you'll see in here there's a number of open days and a number of closed days, which impacts our ultimate user numbers. The dirt bosses, they also groom the trail. So initially the first few years, we were grooming the trails actually with volunteers out there with snowshoes, compacting the trail. As you guys know, fat biking, which is mountain biking with just larger tires, is a growing winter activity, and we see numbers increase as we have good snow conditions. Mork recently purchased what's called a snow scoot 2 winters ago. For the trail, it is a very small youth-size snowmobile that they use with a pole-behind groomer that you think of for Nordic skiing. It's got an 18-inch track. So think of a Nordic skiing snowmobile pulling a track. This is 18 inches wide. So the volunteers manage that, and we have certain best practices that they follow. And then there's also weekly trail work during the dirt season. So we plan from May through October. Last night was actually our last night doing trail work with the group. And we mostly end this time of year because the seasons start changing, but also sunlight. It's difficult to get people out after work and be able to work on the trail. But we also have an agreement with Mork that one of those sessions, volunteer sessions per month, are actually for restoration. So a ton of restoration hours has gone in, and it's kind of funny. I thought that this group would be more interested in actually the dirt work, the maintenance of the actual trail. But we see our volunteers, the number of volunteers that show up for our restoration nights, typically are larger than our actual numbers for dirt work night. So that is alive and well, and everyone loves working with Janet. Most of us love Janet. So, and then this group of volunteers is going strong. Keeping them not burned out and engaged is always something that we're aware of. But we have a very dedicated and committed group. And looking at some of our numbers here specifically, you can see with our volunteer hours, we've had this year specifically 155 volunteer participations, and of that 53 unique volunteers. So a lot of people that are involved in this, and you can see a lot of people that are returning to volunteer weekly and monthly as well. We've had, as far as volunteer specific events, we've offered 18 to the community. And then total hours, you can see for trail maintenance and management, Mork has put forward 317 hours and 97 hours for park restoration specifically. And so a total volunteer hours is 414 hours. And we kind of break that down from a cost benefit number, and so that's close to $15,000 of volunteer value for the city that they're providing. And I have to say, just working with them, the amount of communication that happens on our text thread and phone calls, that stuff doesn't get documented, and these guys are constantly thinking about the trail and very passionate as well. And then just shifting to just some general numbers of usership, I think the good thing is you worry you're going to build something and invest in something as a community and you're going to see a spike in users, and then as things go off you see less people utilizing it. But if you look at the graph below, you can see there's really been a consistent usage out there. I'd say that spike in 23-24 is largely because we had a higher percentage of days open. We also had a good snow year that year, so we had a lot more winter usage versus this past winter wasn't as great. So this year we estimate that we had just over 17,000 visits. And then I think the kind of fun thing to get this 5-year anniversary is we can look back at the data and we can see that we've estimate that we've had over 12,000 unique mountain bikers visit the park, and roughly over 92,000 visits total. So it's been a long time getting this, mountain bike trail a part of the community. There was worried about it, but we can see after 5 years that there's a lot of people that are engaging in the park and using the mountain bike trail, and usage is consistent. And then just looking ahead to next year, we are working with MORC to do a city and MORC event. We're not exactly sure. We're actually doing our Dirt Boss retreat in northern Wisconsin this weekend, so we're going to hash some of these things out. It's a tough job I got. But we are going to kind of revisit that 5-year anniversary in May, which is, Bike Month, to celebrate that. It was also the grand opening of the trail. And then we continue. One of the big things is we did a lot of heavy buckthorn removal before the trail was put in, and some of that buckthorn is coming back, so we are really focused on increasing sight lines, and then also really focusing on revisiting some of that buckthorn removal and mitigation that's along what we refer to as the trail corridor, which is where the trail is, and then 15 feet on each side of that trail. So that will be a lot of the work we do next year. And then just looking ahead, everyone's hoping for a good winter and get some of that grooming equipment out and see how it's going to operate and provide just a good quality trail for winter biking.
What's the status of biking at night? Is it open at night?
It is. So the park is open for normal park hours. I feel like that's at 10 o'clock. And so we do, bikers use special lights that either can be attached to their helmets and or onto their handlebars that allow them to ride, which is especially nice in the winter when it's dark at 5 o'clock, but they can utilize the mountain bike trail.
Brad? I'm not a biker, but I use the trail for snowshoeing a lot in the winter. It's beautiful. It's great. So, well done. Question, because there are days where it's closed, for utilization, is there any kind of trail hotline, or either on the website or a phone call, so people could know without going out there whether they're going to be able to get on the trail or not?
Yeah, there is. There's a couple different avenues to check trail conditions. The main one is an app called TrailBot. So we constantly update TrailBot, and we should. Our trail kiosks have a link to that where people can directly check that.
All trails?
That would be good.
All MORC trails have used TrailBot. And actually, I should say, TrailBot, almost every trail system in Minnesota is on TrailBot. So if you're traveling in Duluth or Cuyuna, you can go to TrailBot and check those conditions and make plans.
TRAIL.bot.com or?
It's an app.
It's an app.
Yep. So if you were going to go online, so morcmtb.org, that's the Minnesota Off-Road Cyclist website. You can go there, click on trail conditions, and also check there. And what's nice is that TrailBot automatically syncs with their website. So whatever you post on which is great for our volunteers because they can use the app to provide information to the community, but then also open and close it, and then that automatically syncs with MORC's website. And then when we have an open or close event, there's a group conversation text thread that we use, and you'll have someone on site that's like opening the gate, and then people on the back end will go to Facebook and make an update on our Facebook page, update Trailbot, which then syncs with the website.
Is that in Minnetonka memo ever? Is that link? That's a great link. I never knew that.
Yeah.
That's really
Yeah.
helpful info. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think we should plug that in there.
Yeah, Jesse, so you mentioned All Trails, that's an app as well.
Yeah, that's an app, but that's for
Is-
people who are avid hikers.
Okay.
This is different. This
Yeah.
is for mountain bikers.
So it's not
But
on All
a
Trails.
A lot of people have All Trails.
Yeah.
I've never heard of this one.
Yep.
So it's not, All Trails would not show you?
No, All Trails will show you, if I'm correct, Lone Lake Park and
Yes.
the actual like where to park, reviews, and then a map of Lone Lake Park.
Okay.
It may even link you to the like Lone Lake Park Mountain Bike Trail webpage that's on the city, but it won't give you open or close information.
Okay.
Has there been any issues with e-bikes? We proved that in the past year or so.
Surprisingly not. I'm not sure what conversations you've had about people's experiences using the regional trails in the area, but I also live in the area, and I know some of these e-bikes that are going 30 miles an hour. I see them, and I worry that we're going to start seeing them out on the mountain bike trail, and there has been no complaints or no issues.
Does that include I guess I call them mini bikes?
Mm-hmm.
That's also, when you say e-bike, are you referring to those mini bikes as well?
What do they call the razors, or the
Yeah,
ones that are
well,
much less a bike and more of a motorcycle?
That one technically wouldn't be allowed in our park.
Correct.
Right? You have to be
Yep.
able to pedal it.
Yep.
Pedal assist.
Yep. And we don't allow bikes with throttles. Yeah, on the mountain bike trail.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thanks. Great resource.
Yeah.
So the next item we have is just an update on the Glen Lake Park plan, master plan. So I'll turn it over to Matt. I don't know that you have, right there.
Here
There
it
it is,
is.
yep.
Glen Lake Park master planning is just about to get started. Turning on my mic. We walked that site during the joint tour. We have yet to put up the Minnetonka Matters page and start surveying the community. I have been talking with local rec organization, the Mighty Mites organization, and I'll be presenting to their board. But we haven't scheduled any outreach or engagement events at this point. We were hoping to do that a little earlier in the season, but we're a little bit behind. But we'll be rolling that out before the holidays, knowing that we need to perform conceptual design work over this winter to get a better understanding of how that site could have a skate park and other park amenities, knowing that that Glen Lake Activities Center is going to be torn down at some point in the relatively near future. So we're a little bit delayed on that master planning, but there will be an updated Minnetonka Matters page and outreach events coming up soon that everybody will be invited to, and I'm sure we'll get good survey results and a lot of eyes on that particular park.
Questions, comments? I guess I'll throw it out. From a demolition perspective, is that
Yes.
ideally being scheduled so it's not during baseball season?
We're going to do our best to avoid any disruption to baseball.
Yeah.
Knowing, construction season happens to line up with baseball season.
Okay.
But we certainly want to mitigate any disruption to parking and how well used that park is.
Yeah.
But park improvements do at times
Just curious.
impact park usage. We're certainly going to, take that into concern during the staging of these particular efforts and what that does in terms of impact. We're going to think through that stuff. But park improvements come at a cost, at inconvenience at times. So.
Okay.
Great.
So just if you could pull up the calendar.
Yes.
Can Matt give us a little update on
Yes.
where, because of the off-leash dog status?
Yes.
Yep.
And so this is not in the packet, but Matt
Yeah.
can provide a
So
brief update.
following council recommendations or actions for us, we are designing off-leash area signage for Purgatory Park. There are 2 off-leash areas on the south side of the park that have been identified by the council, and a off-leash corridor from the parking lot down to those areas. We hired a consultant with a graphic designer and an understanding of the park, Bolton and Mank, who helped with the master plan. They are designing a clear and concise signage suite, I would call it, based on the recommendations that we got from the council. We are reviewing those and getting prices for the fabrication. The intention is that those signs go in within the next few weeks at this point, leading into the winter. Our direction is to provide the council feedback at a meeting next June on how it's going. We'll also hear from the police at that point in terms of complaints from the park. There'll be a QR code where folks in the park can register concerns on the off-leash dog areas. So the intention is get those signs up relatively soon and see how it goes.
And in terms of reviewing other potential off-leash areas in the city.
Yep. So the community work group had identified a variety of additional off-leash areas. That's going to start to come up through the master planning process. It's been identified for Big Willow as an option, but we do have a list of other parks that did check a lot of the boxes in terms of good potential locations. So we are looking at a strategy to bring those to you folks and advance that park planning process to some degree to better, think through those potential parcels, what it would take to implement those off-leash areas potentially, what the communication to the neighborhoods around those parks should look like, and just sort of take that ball the next step with the community work group and the sites that they identified.
So would there be an opportunity then for, timing-wise, for us to get some sense of how it's working at Purgatory before we open it up to other parks?
Well, that would be a city council review in next June.
Yeah, so the current direction is to get to have a report ready next June. So we would get data from the police at that point on complaints, some of the hard quantifiable data type elements.
So the city council's kind of put that in their purview.
Okay. But if timing-wise then, are we going to be looking at other parks after June?
Or before.
Well, as part of master planning, yes, absolutely. Is that your question?
But these other ones.
Well, I'm worried about, we assume that everything's great and the dogs and the humans are well behaved, and then we say, okay, we're going to carve out this chunk of another park. But what if the dogs and the humans are not well behaved, and then we've promised another park, and we'd have, there's potential for more conflict.
Well, if I can jump in, I think the council's made it clear that the expectation is that they would like to have additional off-leash areas within Minnetonka, not necessarily a Purgatory kind of construct, but it might be more, as they've referred to, as city parks or whatever. And so I think that's the intention, to look at that. We already know how dogs and people interact. We don't need, it's not a mystery. If you go to Bryant Lake Park, you can see how a dog park works and how the dogs interact, and they're all fully fenced, and there's pros and cons to that. But I think the city council's made it clear that dog owners in Minnetonka are sacrificing a lot by having only right now Purgatory and a reduced area of Purgatory available. So they're interested in other areas that could be available for, and whether it's the hockey rink idea or an enclosed area at Big Willow or whatever. I don't think anybody knows what those look like yet.
Yeah, but to the point, I think it's hard to plan well when we don't have that direction of design elements that the council feels are critical. Because in fact, that's where we really were not on the same page at all, with the city council, is in those not in. We were of course on the same page of yes, we need places for people to take their dogs and have them have off leash time and have social interactions with other dogs, but on the parameters, it was not very close what we came up with. And so I do think it hinders us if we don't have that direction from the city council, and yet we're expected to be taking up that concern. So I don't know what the answer to that is, other than to say, well, maybe something could go there. We have no idea how to direct you otherwise, which we could be in a position to do a lot more for them as an advisory group. But we're not getting from them, I don't feel, more specific parameters of what they really want to see.
Maybe
And that
it's
was
a
my
little premature still, right? Because we haven't done the next master plan. But before we do the next master plan, that decision criteria or requirements or use,
But we're not going to have that,
just some
Leslie's
guidelines.
saying.
No, I mean, the direction that we have is in June, we will be revisiting this with the council to determine how things have been going and what the next steps forward would be. I think during
need to
master
decide that
planning,
still
we
then.
can identify potential areas that would be appropriate for an off-leash dog use. But the master plan is high level. It's not going to provide you any kind of a design.
So
or
you'd
any-
be thinking more like, these are the low vegetative quality areas,
Yep.
right? They meet all our other criteria of
Accessibility,
accessibility, the
Yeah.
the vegetative value,
Yep.
all the parameters, and we just probably leave it at that.
Right.
Because we don't have any other discernible design help
Right.
at this
If-
point.
We can't say now, should it be fenced in, should it be
Right.
Yeah.
unfenced,
Right.
just signs, because we don't.
It would depend on the property.
Yes, it would. And also depends on
depends
what
on
the
the
council
city
is
council,
interested. Yep.
Yeah.
But the park board won't really have that information until June, which is what they set as a timeline for staff to present how this has been going, what lessons have been learned. And usually they want a recommendation for what we should do going forward, and that's when that discussion will happen.
I guess I'm just surprised that city council would be okay with us not going through another spring, summer season without having additional designated off-leash areas in the city. That seems really slow, but if that's what they want from a high strategic level, it is what it is.
Yeah.
It just surprises me.
Yeah,
And maybe that'll change.
could change.
Because I don't think, my own perspective would be, there won't be another off-leash area like Purgatory. Let's put it that way, because there aren't any other parks large enough and isolated enough to have the kind of exposure that Purgatory has.
I haven't been out in too many of the parks lately. Can you talk a little bit more about the QR codes? I've not seen them. I don't know where they are.
They're not up yet. We've created flyers that the community, our officers have been handing out in the form of education about what the new ordinance says for off-leash dogs. And there's a QR code that takes you directly to our website, and it's a concern form, essentially what happened and where, and a police officer would contact that person back.
So is the thought then that there would be signs in the park?
Yes,
also?
so the signage suite that we're reviewing and going to be installing in the next few weeks here have QR codes and make it very clear and easy what to do.
And it's in Purgatory and the other parks?
Initially, it's just going to be in Purgatory.
Because Purgatory is the only place you can have an off-leash dog.
Right.
Legally.
Legally. And Matt, you might want to comment. I guess we've seen, you've mentioned that there's been comments by the police, but there's been fewer incidents or fewer reports of off-leash dogs in other parks since the ordinance went in.
I have heard that anecdotally from our officers that the change in the ordinance did seem to have a ripple effect through the community.
It might, if you had any extra signs, it's possible that a few in Jadana would be good.
Yep. There's a lot of new signage to do. So part of the park entry signage project included park rules, but we've shelved that knowing that what are our rules?
I did see new ones in Purgatory, though. The little tan ones.
Yeah, those were specific for Purgatory, but these are generalized park hours, no alcoholic beverages, stuff like that. And we're due to refresh all those, but have sort of delayed that process. But those will be rolling out too once we get a better sense of the dog issue.
Okay.
Great.
So there was some, in another sphere that I travel, working with the city's like ordinance violation website, and do you want feedback from the enforcers? The feedback for people who don't post it anonymously has been almost completely absent. And so I have a real concern, and this was on a smaller issue. So I have a real concern with a citywide ordinance and then the purgatory process that many people who utilize this system are going to find they get no feedback, they get no return phone calls, simply because if on a much smaller level that was happening, and this is much bigger.
Why was that? Because they were posting anonymously or not anonymously?
They were saying, here's who I am, here's how to contact me, I want to be contacted.
Okay.
And they still were not being contacted.
That's
So,
not good.
and we're not, this is maybe a 20th of the numbers that would probably come through once this QR code is up at Purgatory and other parks. Like if there's one, if we say eventually we get to one at every park, and it's in the memo, the QR code, so people have it already. That's a big concern. I don't know what you guys can do other than to say, like, get ready, PD, because it's coming, and you're probably going to be inundated. And we understand from perhaps smaller, similar like ordinance violation initiatives where people have been concerned about kind of scofflawing, that you're going to be unable to handle the traffic and actually get back to people, and then that'll create more tension. Right? If people say, I want the city to enforce this, I'm seeing consistently that it's not happening, I want to be contacted about this, and then they're not contacted, it just like rolls into a bigger and bigger ball of tension and angst.
Well, we're not in their day-to-day operational meetings, but I do understand the police are prepared for this. That they know what's happening, they're readying their staff.
Yeah.
And they understand what they're going to be dealing with.
And my sense anecdotally from Captain Meehan and other comments from the community service officer, in the past, I think they've done a good job always following up with residents who've expressed concerns, if they're not anonymous. I don't think we've had a lot of anonymous expressed concerns on dogs. Usually people want to be heard. So, but that's a good heads up, because if they're not hearing back on whatever the other issue was, that's unfortunate. 8B.
Okay.
Thanks, Matt.
Yep.
Pull up the. So, just looking at the upcoming schedule. So our next meeting is right around the corner. So don't think it's a month away. You have 2 weeks. Not a lot of rest time.
What's the date again?
It'll be November 5th, Wednesday. And so we know we have two significant items. One will be review of the Park Board strategic plan and 2026 work plan. So the strategic plan, so technically the Park Board hasn't seen the strategic plan this year because you saw it in 2024, and then there was a desire to change our timing. So there's been a little bit more of a gap when you've seen the plan. But now you'll see it in November and December. So it'll come back in December. And the intent is that it'll be a time for you to review and have some discussions about your strategic plan. Staff is proposing a general work plan for next year. It'll be broken down by quarters, so quarterly work plan, similar to what Ally was mentioning with the Sustainability Commission and having a work plan for that commission. So that'll be an opportunity for you to see what we're proposing. Certainly if there's additions or deletions, that's what we want to get feedback from you on. The strategic plan and the work plan will be actually presented to the council in January. So they do sort of technically adopt or approve your work plan. So they do want to see that. And that's a relatively new thing. I think last year it was presented to them, but before that it typically wasn't presented to the council. But now they want to see work plans for all of the boards and commissions. So that will start next in November 5th. So that'll be some kind of meaty discussion that we're looking forward to. That's really your guiding document. So it's worth spending some time on that. The other item will be the Big Willow Park Master Plan. So as you know, we introduced it at the joint meeting, but really didn't have a chance to get into it in detail. Matt and the consultant have been gathering some public input. You've probably seen signs all around the park. So we have some of that information. We understand. We're starting to get better understanding of issues and opportunities. So we don't want to just present you with a developed plan. We want to bring you along with the process, give you opportunities as a park board to provide feedback and input. So that'll be another time that you can start kind of digging into that plan before it's fully fleshed out. So then the meeting in December, which is on December 3rd, again, you'll see that the ideas back to the strategic plan, that comes to you in November, and then it'll come back to you for adoption in December. In January, and actually this is incorrect, the appointment of chair and vice chair actually should happen in February, so I have that wrong in here. But just to give you an update, as you know, you have a vacant seat. The council is not filling that seat by appointment because the application period is pretty close, and so it starts in December for a January appointment. So basically they're waiting until that period and opening it up for applications versus just appointing somebody for a few months. So you'll have a new park board member in February. And then at that time you'll also appoint your chair and vice chair. Another update is we did actually get an application for a student position. So I'm waiting to hear from our administrative staff about that appointment. They need to be formally appointed by the council, so just waiting to see what happens there. So nobody right now, but we have had an application for that, and we've been without a student position for quite a while, so it would be exciting to get somebody.
If that doesn't work out, let me know and I'll reach out to the high school sustainability class. I now know the teacher's name.
Great. So that's so January, and then February, the idea is we would bring back that Big Willow Master Plan at whatever phase we have it in. At some point, the Cullen Nature Preserve Master Plan will come back, and there'll be other items.
And that'll be a completed plan for a review?
Yes, that would be the goal.
Yep.
We're currently discussing that plan with the land trust who owns
Great.
that piece of property.
So then, do we not have an agenda for January yet?
No, I don't have an agenda for January. There'll be items. I promise you'll have items.
There'll be something to do. Okay.
These were just sort of the main items that would be coming for you. So just wanted to give you a sense of what's coming. And then as far as other meetings and activities, I'll turn that over to Kelly.
Sure. A couple of activities coming up. So Friday we've got the Burwell Spooktacular. It looks like the weather is going to work out in our favor. It's supposed to be in the 50s. So Burwell, that starts at 5 o'clock, 5 to 7:30 at the Burwell House on the Burwell grounds. Saturday, December 6th is Light Up the Commons. That's at Ridgedale Commons. I believe that's our third year of that. And then December 13th, here at the Community Center, 10 a.m. is the Winter Market. So just a couple activities coming up.
All right, thank you. And I'll turn it over to you.
Any park board member reports? I'll just say again, the new signs look great. I keep seeing them pop up everywhere. You're getting around the little parks, so that looks Looks good. I guess, since we are, haven't run long on time, some of the parks, the traditional community planting beds around the base have been destroyed, taken out to put the new signs in. Is the intention that they would be reinstated?
Yes, so there's a Adopt a Park sign
Yeah.
program. Some of the signs have volunteers. They've sort of taken the year off. Some signs went in earlier. We do offer those as volunteer opportunities. If we don't get volunteers, then our staff sometimes installs plants. Often we just mulch it and
Okay.
add edging to make them look neat.
Okay, just curious. Do I have any motion to adjourn? Ann, you've been doing really well with these motions.
I move we adjourn.
I'll second the motion.
Great. All in
No
favor,
roll
aye?
call, you can just.
Okay. Thanks.
Thank you all.
Thank you.